Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Just like in a real trial, we are actually checking jurors in as we speak. So we thank you for your patience. My name is Richard Gabriel, and I am one of the founders of the Online Courtroom Project. We're a group of judges and lawyers, consultants, researchers, and technology experts who have thousands of trials and experience across this country over decades, who are committed to studying both the legal, the administrative, the technological, the communication, behavioral, and psychological elements of online courtrooms for both criminal and civil litigants. When the coronavirus shut down the courts, our group got together and engaged in a thought experiment, inquiry, as you will, of how the courts could continue to provide public access to the justice system in the midst of the pandemic. Some of these questions include, well, how can the court satisfy constitutional requirements, preserving the rights of the litigants, but also maintaining public health and safety standards? Other questions include, what are the challenges or opportunities or even the trade-offs in an online courtroom? Is our justice system really just a place, a physical location, or is it a process? And if it's a process, how is that process affected? That is the presentation of evidence and the judgment of facts in law by fact finders in an online courtroom environment. Over the past 3 months, all of us have researched the law, technology. We've read articles about social science and spoken to court administrators and judges and lawyers across this country. And a few things have actually emerged in those conversations. First, no one wants to replace in-person trials and in-person courtrooms. Second, most, not all, but most judges and lawyers have adapted pretty well to conducting numerous aspects of online procedures, from hearings and mediations and even video conference depositions. And as a result, many people have actually commented on some of the benefits, some of the efficiencies that have come with those online procedures. And third, most importantly, everyone is very, very anxious about how to conduct a jury trial online. But facing a huge backlog of criminal and civil cases, many courts are starting to conduct in-person trials with temperature checks and masks and social distancing. And of course, these carry their own challenges with concerns about representation with older jurors or minority populations who've been adversely affected by the coronavirus just not being able to show up for jury service, or having to call a tremendous number of jurors just to obtain a sufficient pool, or how evidence is going to be affected just with everybody's masked in the courtroom, or, of course, what happens if someone is infected and a mistrial has to be declared. With the new surge of infections across the United States, the National Center for State Courts recently conducted some national polling in which showed how anxious, how reluctant jurors are to show up for jury service, and actually how receptive many of them are to doing some sort of jury service online. Which leads us to today. Our thought experiment has actually become an actual experiment. Over the next 2 days, we've put together a demonstration jury trial in a civil case. In putting together this demonstration, we are going to attempt to show you various aspects of a jury trial and how they might function in an online environment. We actually started at the beginning and looked at the jury summons and an online questionnaire process, but we're going to start by showing you jury selection. We're going to have some opening statements, witness testimony, presentation of exhibits, closing arguments, jury instructions, and deliberations. And in this process, we also want to show you the sidebar, some juror questions, juror requests for evidence and deliberations, and other events that would have to be anticipated in an online trial. Because we're truncating a case for the purposes of this demonstration, and because this is a demonstration, you're going to see things that you may not normally see, and as we engage in also some shortcuts in the evidence, arguments, and testimony that obviously wouldn't happen in a real trial. You also may see procedural elements that may not apply to your own particular jurisdictions where you practice. Bear with us. There's that old saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Well, what you're going to see over the next 2 days will be far from perfect. While we are hoping that this runs relatively smoothly, and we've done what we can to anticipate the bumps and the glitches that occur, that's actually not the point of this exercise. The point is to study what happens when things go wrong, what happens, and then try to actually refine procedures or solve problems. And things will happen, and that's part of the learning that we hope to do over the next 2 days. I may step in periodically when we hit a bump in the road and explain to you what we're seeing in the process, or explain to you some of the things that we've encountered as we've tried to fix the problems. Just like in a real trial where we can't find a juror or an exhibit and everyone is scrambling to get back on track. That's going to probably happen here. Let's face it, if courts decide to take on online jury trial process, there will be a fair share of troubleshooting. And as we will be on a tight time frame, we're not going to have time to actually stop for your questions during the trial process, but we do encourage your comments. We want your questions, we want your concerns, and we're going to give you a link to a Google Doc so we can preserve your great comments. We don't imagine that any online courtroom solution is perfect for any court or any case. It's obviously trickier and more problematic in criminal cases. Some courts may decide just to do parts of the process, such as online jury selection or witness testimony, but we do encourage the courts to engage with the litigating parties to find an appropriate solution for their jurisdiction and their own cases. At the end of this entire process, we hope to have identified areas where the courts really need to pay attention, and we hope to provide some recommendations on best practices to ensure that both the fairest and the clearest procedures in order to preserve the process of justice that is so integral to our democracy. You know, John Adams once said, representative government by trial and trial by jury are the heart and lungs of liberty. And Thomas Jefferson said, I consider trial by jury as the only anchor ever yet imagined by man by which government can be held to the principles of its Constitution. Our founders engaged in a grand experiment with our jury system. In this most challenging time, we welcome you to our much humbler experiment and welcome you to our online courtroom. I will now turn this over to Judge Hastings to begin.